The fight world was buzzing after Khamzat Chimaev secured his victory over Dricus du Plessis, and the reactions from fellow UFC fighters were just as electrifying as the bout itself. When Chimaev entered the octagon, there was already a sense of unease among fans and fighters alike. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary contest. Dricus had been riding a strong wave of momentum, building a reputation as one of the most durable and dangerous middleweights. Yet even that wasn't enough to hold back the storm that Chimaev brought with him. What unfolded was a clash that revealed the brutal pace and relentless aggression Chimaev thrives on, and as soon as it ended, fighters across the roster couldn't help but share their thoughts. Some shocked, others impressed, and many realizing that the division might be shifting under their feet. Almost immediately after the fight, social media lit up with commentary. Some veterans who had once doubted Chimaev's gas tank were left stunned by the level of cardio he displayed. They noted how he didn't just rush in recklessly like in earlier fights. This time he seemed more calculated, as if every strike and every grappling exchange was pre-planned. That left many to comment that this might be the most disciplined version of Chimaev we've seen so far, and if this is the level he's at now, the rest of the division is in trouble. Others pointed out how Dricus was visibly frustrated, unable to get into the rhythm he usually thrives on, and that in itself showed just how much of a nightmare matchup Chimaev can be. Fans expected fireworks, but the way fellow fighters broke down the details of the performance gave the entire fight a new level of meaning. Several wrestlers who have long prided themselves on their grappling expertise admitted that Chimaev's pressure was suffocating. They explained that once Chimaev locks onto you, it's not just physical control, it's mental as well. Opponents get drained not only by his strength, but by the constant threat of being taken down or smashed against the cage. One fighter even compared the experience of facing Chimaev to being stuck underwater while trying to breathe, saying that every moment is exhausting and the margin for error disappears instantly. At the same time, many strikers were focused on how Chimaev's stand-up game continues to evolve. They pointed out that his punches were sharper, his setups cleaner, and his ability to close distance almost terrifying. It wasn't just about brute force anymore. He was mixing in feints, cutting angles, and forcing Dricus to guess what was coming next. This unpredictability left many in the community suggesting that Chimaev might now be the most well-rounded fighter in his division, a frightening prospect for anyone aiming for the top. Some fighters praised Dricus for his toughness, saying that despite the outcome, most others wouldn't have lasted as long under that kind of storm. But there was no denying the gap that had been exposed. The reaction wasn't all praise, though. A handful of fighters voiced skepticism, pointing out that while Chimaev looked dominant, the question still remains about how he will perform against the absolute elite over a 5-round war. They noted that while his energy looked great, sustaining that kind of pressure against a seasoned champion who thrives in later rounds is still untested territory. These doubts didn't take away from the performance, but highlighted that, as incredible as Chimaev looks, the UFC is filled with sharks, and every fight brings a new test. This skepticism itself sparked debate online, with fans and fighters going back and forth about whether Chimaev has already proven enough, or if there are still lingering weaknesses waiting to be revealed. One of the most interesting dynamics in the reactions came from fighters who have already shared the cage with Chimaev. Gilbert Burns, who famously pushed Chimaev to his limit in one of the most thrilling fights in recent UFC memory, was among those who reminded everyone not to underestimate Dricus's resilience. Burns noted that even though Chimaev dominated, it doesn't erase the fact that fighters like Dricus bring a level of danger that can never be dismissed. Other veterans backed that sentiment, pointing out that even a dominant win doesn't guarantee easy nights ahead in such a stacked division. Still, they acknowledged that Chimaev had proven something new, his ability to adjust and fight smarter than before. The wave of reactions also included some playful but telling callouts. A few fighters hinted that they wanted the next shot at Chimaev, claiming that they had the right style to expose him. Whether they truly believed it or were just looking for a chance at the spotlight didn't matter much. The reality is that every time Chimaev wins, he shakes up the rankings and forces everyone to rethink their place in the pecking order. This win over Dricus was no different, and fighters knew that calling him out could either lead to the biggest fight of their careers or the toughest the night they've ever experienced. Even outside of the division, other UFC stars couldn't resist weighing in. Lightweight contenders, heavyweights, and legends of the sport all had something to say about the aura Chimaev continues to build. Some admired the confidence he carries, saying it reminds them of the way greats like Khabib once dominated, with an aura that made opponents mentally beaten before even even stepping inside the cage. Others said that while Khamzat's rise is undeniable, it's also dangerous to buy too heavily into the hype too early. That balance between admiration and caution is part of what makes the community's reaction so fascinating. Fighters understand the reality better than anyone, and their insights show both respect and strategic analysis. Perhaps the most telling reactions came from those who see the bigger picture. Of UFC matchmaking, analysts, fighters, and insiders all suggested that Chimaev's win over Dricus sets the stage for some blockbuster fights ahead. Talk immediately turned toward possible title contention, potential super fights, and even cross-division challenges. The excitement wasn't just about one victory, it was about what this means for the UFC's future. When fighters themselves are debating where a man fits in the hierarchy, it shows how much impact he's already had. The victory wasn't just another win, it was a statement that forced everyone to pay attention. What stood out most in the flood of reactions was the emotion. Some fighters were genuinely shaken, admitting that seeing Dricus get handled that way was unexpected. Others were inspired, saying it motivated them to train harder, knowing that the level of competition continues to rise. A few were even a little fearful, openly stating that fighting someone like Chimaev would be the toughest challenge of their careers. These human responses gave fans a glimpse into the reality of the fight game. Behind the confidence and bravado, even professional fighters respect and sometimes fear what a dominant contender can bring. The night ended not just with a victory for Chimaev, but with a reminder of how quickly the UFC landscape can change. One fight, one performance, and suddenly the division feels different. The reactions from fighters across weight classes captured that perfectly. Admiration, doubt, fear, and excitement all rolled into one. Every comment added another layer to the story, and together they painted a picture of a sport that thrives on uncertainty, where one dominant figure can shake up everything in an instant. Chimaev's win over Dricus du Plessis did exactly that, and the echoes of that night will continue to ripple through the UFC for months to come. When all is said and done, the reactions to this fight weren't just about the performance inside the cage, they were about what it represents for the future. Chimaev proved once again that he's more than just hype, and every fighter watching knows that his presence means new challenges and new risks. Whether praised as unstoppable or questioned for what still lies ahead, one thing is certain: the UFC can't ignore him, and neither can his fellow fighters. The roar of reactions made that crystal clear, and the anticipation for his next step is already building to a fever pitch.